Welcome to USA News Today. Please subscribe and check notification box to get all breaking news alert and latest updates on hot cases.
News Today, April 15, 2000. Trump says Mexico is cracking down on migrants. There, it's a different picture. If the Mexican government is cracking down on Central American migrants, as President Donald Trump recently asserted, there was no evidence of it here in this remote town in southern Mexico. Roughly 3,000 migrants, mostly arrivals on recent caravans, had found temporary quarters in a sun-baked sports complex, where residents scramble for shade beneath tents and rough lean-tos crafted from branches and palm fronds. But they weren't being detained or ready for deportation. Instead, they were being processed for permits that will facilitate travel north to the U.S. border. "We want our children to have a future without fear of gangs," said Oscar Amilcar, a Salvadoran hunkered down with his wife, 2 children and migrants from Guatemala and Honduras. They all plan to resume their journey soon and present themselves to U.S. border authorities to claim asylum. It was a far different picture than the one Trump painted earlier this month when he announced he was holding off on his threat to shut the U.S.-Mexico border because Mexican authorities were apprehending people now by the thousands and bringing them back to their countries. "Nobody's ever seen anything like it," he said during a visit to the California border city of Calexico. Closing the border would have severe, and possibly disastrous, economic repercussions for the United States as well as Mexico. And Trump was facing pressure from across the political spectrum to rescind his threat. The purported spike in Mexican enforcement offered some political cover, except that it doesn't seem to have occurred. Mexico has no intention of engaging in mass deportations or moving to stop so-called migrant caravans, said Rocio Gonzalez Higuera, head of migration policy for the Human Rights branch of the country's Interior Ministry. Mexico is implementing a process of orderly, regulated, secure migration, with respect for human rights, Gonzalez said in an interview in Tapachula, a migrant hub just north of the Guatemalan border. When asked about Trump's comments, what another country decides or says is the responsibility of that country, not ours. According to statistics published by the Mexican government, enforcement actions against migrants have actually slowed somewhat since President Andrés Manuel López Obrador took office in December. Deportations were down 16% and arrests 7% for December, January and February compared with the same 3-month period 1 year earlier. Figures for March were not yet available. The reductions came amid decade-high numbers of Central American migrants making their way through Mexico to the United States. You have the number of Central Americans arriving increasing almost exponentially, but deportations remaining relatively stable, said Stephanie Lutert, who heads the Mexico Security Initiative at the University of Texas at Austin. López Obrador made a campaign promise to respect the human rights of migrants, and his government has stressed assisting them rather than criminalizing them, a posture that has even perturbed some people in Mexico fed up with the illicit migration. To that end, it has issued skyrocketing numbers of humanitarian visas to northbound migrants. In January and February, the government provided more than 19,000 such visas, almost a third of the total for all of 2018. Late last week, Donald Trump publicly floated the idea of releasing asylum seekers into sanctuary cities, purportedly as punishment for their refusal to cooperate with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, officials. His remarks came less than 1 day after the Washington Post reported on leaked communications from DHS discussing the idea as far back as last November. Trump's own administration quickly shot down any speculation that the president was seriously considering such a proposal, but late Saturday night, he sent out a tweet doubling down on his initial idea, and invented a legal theory supporting it, seemingly out of whole cloth. In fact, his own Department of Homeland Security has thoroughly rejected the idea as a farce, on both practical and legal grounds. On Sunday, Senator Ben Cardin, DMD, similarly dismissed the idea as nonsense during an appearance on Fox News, and suggested the mere mention of such a policy was a game of political theater. My understanding is that's not legal, There's no budget for that purpose. This is clearly a political move for the president, he told host Chris Wallace. He's using immigrants as pawns in a game of political chess. He's not really interested in a solution, he's more interested in preserving a political issue for the 2020 election. The White House has a long track record of appeasing their racist supporters by demonizing immigrants. Last fall, as the November midterm elections approached,